Well, hello there and good afternoon. Thank you for joining me. I am Frost PDP, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about Battlefield 1 and the opening experience, which I only just got through. Uh, some of you may know me as a history teacher, and some of you may realize that this is a game set 100 years ago, and I have to first off give EA and DICE credit where it is due, right? They throw you into an opening scene and they tell you up front, like, you're not expected to survive. Because the soldiers of World War One weren't really expected to survive, at least not after the war really got started and things became just this hellhole of divided trenches and fortifications that could never be broken easily. They start you off with what's called a scenario called Storm of Steel, which again, like they did their homework on this. They referenced the 369th Infantry, the Harlem Hellfighters, which was historically significant to my neighborhood, to say the least. But they give you a bunch of other scenarios you can go through. And I could always replay this again, but I'd rather talk more about the scenarios themselves and how they're structuring this from like a narrative perspective. They can take time out of sync here. There's no real like clear storyline where you follow a protagonist from point A to point B. And that's not a bad thing for any kind of creative endeavor, like to not be transfixed by time. It's pretty kind of cool. But they had the thing where they give you the tank. I guess I don't know. I haven't played any of this, right? I just got the game. I've played through like one scenario where they also, by the way, give you a little sampling of different types of gameplay. So you do pilot a tank during this. You do use an assault rifle. You do use a regular rifle. It gives you a chance to get at least a little familiarity. Through Metal and Blood, like shattering enemy lines, that is exactly what the British tanks were designed for. Were they as effective as we like to think of modern tanks to be? No, they were slow. They were vulnerable to barrages at times. They broke down quite often. In fact, it's worth noting that Germany's largest tank in service, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong, is the British Mark V tank, right? Like it's the same tank the British used. They just captured it and repurposed it a little bit and then used it. You get to fly around in a plane, and planes were they the effective weapons of war we know them to be today? No, right? They were mostly for reconnaissance, and if you knew where your enemy's trenches were, you could send those coordinates down, especially after the radio was really popularized. You could send those coordinates down to your artillery, so your artillery could not bomb, but barrage, I guess you would say, the enemy positions. So air supremacy mattered because you could use it to coordinate your artillery better. But I mean, people experimented with dropping bombs literally by hand out of their plane. Yeah, this one just sounds like it's going to be tragic because if you know much about the Italian front, and here's where I would really put my recommendation that you go check out a YouTube channel called The Great War, because they follow the war's history week by week. So if it's October 22nd, 2016, or whatever it is, I don't even know. You're looking at them looking at the war 100 years ago where it stood. So you'll be looking at 1916. And they've got a long way to go, but they've been an incredible YouTube channel, and it's worth going to check out what they've got, because this week, their episode is about the 8th Battle of the Isonzo River, which ended about as well as all the others. Not well for anyone involved. The runner, Gallipoli, one of the biggest Allied catastrophes, was an attempt to basically invade Turkey. And who knows if they were shooting for Constantinople, because I know, especially as a Crusader Kings 2 player, as an EU4 watcher, more than player, I've tried, the whole idea of holy wars and getting Constantinople back, that's a very popular one. And it was still thought of as a thing that the Greeks, which Greece existed at the time, the Greeks might want Constantinople back. In fact, I remember reading something about a time when they controlled it, but very briefly. I'm not sure how that went. It had something to do with one of the wars between World War I and World War II. Yeah, I know, there were wars between that, but not like big ones. Finally, Lawrence of Arabia. I mean, this is one of the great historical figures that's been popularized into movies of this war, and it's, as always, the truth is stranger than the fiction. But it's awesome that they're actually going to have a campaign located on the, not even the Eastern Front, but we're talking like we're talking in the Middle East. Like, oh yeah, this is a world war. Now, would I've liked to see something in North Africa? Well, to be fair, North Africa wasn't the greatest front in the world, right? It mostly was still controlled by the Ottoman Empire, which is over here. Yeah, I know Egypt is independent, or at least has independence with British authority over, say, the Suez Canal. But that's just it. The British were able to create a giant uprising in the Ottoman Empire and try to really undermine their uh, control of the situation. And to their credit, they succeeded. We still see some of the effects of that today. Now, that's not to say that the entire Middle Eastern catastrophe is due to, I can't think of the name right now of the treaty, but it's the treaty that ended World War I and carved up the Middle East between France and Britain. Like, it's not really that simple. You know, like, if you, again, talking about Crusader Kings, you go back and you play this game, you'll see that there have been problems there for years, since the Shia-Sunni split, in fact. You know, nothing is ever that simple. Yeah, we didn't help, but we didn't make things, impossibly worse. I mean, before that, it was under the control of an empire that the Ottoman Empire is well known to have committed quite a bit of genocide. See the Armenian genocide, which is a genocide, guys. Let's be real here. It was as bad as it's almost as bad as the Holocaust. I don't want to say it's as bad as the Holocaust. It didn't have that systematic nature to it, which made the Holocaust distinct. But in terms of like human catastrophe inflicted to a single group, it was, you can't compare, but it's horrible. It's in the 1.5 million range, which is really bad. I mean, just stunning, right? And this is before the Holocaust. It's not like they had a model to go on. It also probably wasn't the first genocide in history. So we are a species, as this game points out, that has a lot of flaws, right? And the whole point of life is we're trying to improve things. You know, at the very beginning of this game, the character that you play as, he talks about how we're the muds and the rats in the mud. Okay, I can say that correctly. How we're honorable and horrible at the same time, and it's like, all right, he's not wrong. And how a lot of young men and some women went and fought and served, and many died. There's no other way to put this. World War I was really horrible in a way that World War II wasn't. On the battlefield, World War II, except maybe in Russia, except maybe with the war crimes, the actual battles were differently fought. It was not the same sort of hell where just like at any minute anything could happen and you would never know. The invention of the radio really did change the nature of warfare. It allowed people to have some preparation time. You at least kind of knew what you were getting into. In World War I, nobody really understood. At least nobody in charge. It's the sad part, right? Like Sir Douglas Haig, for example, didn't really understand what the hell Cadorna. What was war going to be about? Falkenheim. What was war going to be about? How is this war going to be fought? How do these weapons change things? Chemical warfare, is that different than any other warfare? At the time, nobody understood that. Nowadays, we understand chemical warfare, which unfortunately is sort of happening in Syria. We understand that to be a qualitatively different thing. Just like we understand the nuclear bomb to be qualitatively different, even though, at the time, when you looked at the casualty numbers, you didn't see a difference. The bombing of Tokyo killed about 100,000 people. The bombing of Hiroshima killed about 80,000 people. Numerically, it seems to be the same. But nuclear weapons took a turn that regular weapons just couldn't because of the nature of the weapon, and things change. We understand now that nuclear weapons are different. We understand now that chemical weapons are different. At the time, people didn't. Just like at the time, people didn't really know how this war was going to go. Everyone thought their side was going to be done by Christmas, and it wasn't. And everyone thought that it couldn't get any worse when it kind of could. So, eventually, we come to a point where we have to end this video, and eventually we come to a point of peace. But I just wanted to share my initial impressions, because to me, and this is just my personal opinion, this opening sequence, Storm of Steel, really did kind of capture the throwaway nature of the way that some soldiers' lives were viewed. It was like, yeah, we're going to lose 10,000 troops to make this attack, but hey, we'll gain 50 yards from it. Like, what? Huh? From the modern perspective, we don't understand it because we value the soldier's life. But at the time, it was even seen sort of as like a spot of bravery. Like, you're going to die. And how's that one poem go? Ours is not to wonder why, ours is just to do or die. Charge of the Light Brigade, I think? I could be wrong. The point is, when you look at it from a historical perspective, this is a game that seems to, at least, and I've only played a little bit of it, but it seems to take into account the real human tragedy of the war, and that's what I came here to say. So, will I be playing some Battlefield on this channel? Absolutely. Will I be playing the single-player campaign through? Maybe. We'll see. But most of all, I just wanted to get this thought out because it means a lot to me, especially because we're 100 years after the war, and they seem to have put their homework in. They pulled names, right? So they got names in this first sequence and said this person lived from this to this. This person lived from that. And one guy was 18 years old and he died. He was born in 1900, died in 1918. And that's the end of the war, where it was at least a little bit mobile and there was some degree of flexibility in how combat was fought because you had the radio. You had airplanes doing their things. It's worth remembering. There's a reason why we have Veterans Day. There's a reason why we have Memorial Day. It's worth remembering. So thank you for joining me. If you'd like to hear more about this kind of thing, hit the like and subscribe buttons. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you'd like to hear more about. I'm very active on the weekends in responding to things. And if we're going to talk history, I'd love to talk history. I'll be wrong sometimes. I'm not that good at it, but you know, at the same time, I've studied it kind of my whole life, so please feel free to engage me in dialogue if this is something that haunts you, and it should haunt you a little bit, especially if you're somebody who is of age to have been in this war, been drafted and sent to this war. It should haunt you. As always, we say on this channel, La Paz means the peace, and it's something that these people who fought surely wish they had.